Hello and welcome back to the MSBaithak podcast. I'm your host Didi, and joining me today once again is my friend and your co-host Vedant. On this episode, we'll be talking about the F1 Belgium GP. So let's grab some chai, take our seats, ready opinions, and dive right into the conversation. Hello Vedant, and the story just repeats itself once again. And it's the same story before the summer break. It was before the summer break, and once again after the summer break, and it just seems there's no stopping Red Bull. What are your thoughts on the dominant victory that Max Verstappen took on Sunday?
Yeah, I think before the summer break, they were still competitive with Ferrari somewhat, right? They were, of course, they were the better car, but Ferrari were somewhat trying to match them and somewhat able to match them. But I think with the new floor regulations, and as everyone has sort of concluded that these new floor regulations have indeed helped Red Bull even more than like the opposite effect has happened now or whatever. So yeah, I think this championship, like Ferrari needed 9 victories from the 9 races, and hope would be hoping that Max Verstappen didn't finish in the top three or for most of them. But now, even if Ferrari do get those wins, Max Verstappen is too fast, and he'll finish P2 every time or P1. There's no stopping him. So this championship is effectively over, and it's just what Ferrari does with it is the entertaining part now.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. The championship is effectively over. But I don't know about the flow regulations. There's no
Yeah,
empirical data to support that the flow regulations helped Red Bull because even Mattia Binotto was adamant that the flow regulations did not in the least hurt Ferrari.
yeah,
He didn't say it helped them, but he did say the the effect is negligible either way. But I think obviously there is speculation about the various reasons. There's also talk about Red Bull bringing in a lot more upgrades compared to the rest of the teams in the field, and Mattia Binotto has been very vocal about it. And what Red Bull is doing, only Red Bull knows, only Christian Horner knows what's going on behind the scenes, how they're being so efficient with in their development. But even without that, it just seemed to get come together for Red Bull really well
yeah,
this weekend, and there is also speculation that it might be track specific. But at the end of the day, the Red Bull is a very very efficient car. It's fast in the straights, but it's also able to generate downforce without too much drag in the corners, which is what surprised Charles Leclerc because in the last 3-4 years that he's been with Ferrari, he hasn't seen a car that could do both essentially. But I think the issue was also magnified this weekend because Ferrari was struggling with a lot of tire issues. It seemed both the drivers were nursing the tires in every stint, whereas Max Verstappen could. It seemed he could push a lot more on his tires. And Max Verstappen starting 14th. Yes, there was a safety car and whatnot at the beginning of the race, and he was effectively P8 or P7, something like that. But he still finished with a 15-second lead over his own teammate.
yep,
So that just goes to show, how much not just how good a job Max Verstappen did, but there were a lot more issues for Ferrari and running that car this weekend compared to Red Bull. But obviously we'll only know depending based on the results of the next few races, right, as to where do these teams really stand relative to each other. Uh, but other than all of that, Ferrari came out. It seemed they didn't make a mistake in terms of strategy all race. Charles Leclerc obviously got unlucky with Max Verstappen.
yeah,
What seems to be Max
yeah,
Verstappen's tear off, and then Ferrari pull a blinder um, at at the most unnecessary time in the race.
yeah,
Uh, you know, obviously, the Charles Leclerc is to be blamed for the penalty. It is his job, to make sure, regardless of what the sensors are doing, it is his job to make sure that he is under the pit lane speed limit while entering the pit lane and everything else. But it was just not necessary, and they ended up with what 3 less points than they would have
two
had
less
had
points,
everything gone their way
two less
because
points.
Yeah, but like if Charles Leclerc had gotten the
Yeah,
fastest lap because that is what he
yeah,
pitted for, he overtook Alonso, and then he would have gotten that one extra point. And what I did not understand was why is Ferrari going leave everything, like set everything aside, set the fact that it's the last last lap, whatever, set it aside, the risk of being overtaken by Alonso. Why did Ferrari need to go for that extra point?
yeah. Absolutely,
I
there was no need for it.
I
Yeah,
Yeah, I cannot come up with a single reason. Championship is effectively over. 1 point is not going to help Ferrari and Charles Leclerc, bring back the championship, swing the momentum back towards Ferrari. So there was absolutely no reason to, deny Max Verstappen, try to deny Max Verstappen that 1 point. And even on softs at the end of the race with low fuel, Charles Leclerc's Ferrari was 6 tenths slower than Max Verstappen's fastest lap early on in the race, which again, just goes to show the difference in performance between the two cars this weekend. And I mean, yeah, I mean it's interesting. Where does Ferrari need to go from here on? Because clearly they can't bring the upgrades at the same pace as Red Bull, so they can't exactly beat Red Bull over the course of this year, even in terms of pace. So what should the plan for Ferrari be going forward?
yeah. I mean, I think Matteo Binotto has talked about it, that the way Red Bull are bringing in the upgrades, it is sort of counterintuitive to uh, the whole budget cap thing, right? And he was hoping that Red Bull might run out of financial resources towards the middle part or the end, second half of the season, but it doesn't seem like that. And Ferrari have uh, are clearly far behind. But if at all, Red Bull sort of you know slow down on the upgrades towards these last 5 to 7 races of the season, and Ferrari keep bringing one or two upgrades every single race to just keep their flow going. I think maybe we can see a sort of convergence towards the end of the season, probably. But I think in
And
it,
obviously,
yeah.
in
Sorry. Continue.
I think in comparison, Ferrari will have a little more wind tunnel
Yeah,
time and CFD time compared to Red Bull because of where they are in the constructors' championship now and where they will eventually finish, undoubtedly. Um,
yeah,
but it just doesn't seem enough for them. We talked about this at the start of the season, even when Ferrari won, right? We were like, the biggest concern for Ferrari is being able to keep up the development pace throughout the year, because we've seen even during times without the budget cap that Ferrari was not able to compete with Mercedes, when arguably Ferrari had the greatest amount of prize money that they were getting at the end of
yeah,
the season because of the historical bonus or whatnot, and they were probably spending just as much. They had just as many resources and whatnot, right? Uh, so it's not a huge stretch to understand that, or to accept the fact that Ferrari is not able to keep up with the development, but it is definitely, at least for us, sitting from the outside who've never worked in F1, it is definitely difficult to understand why they can't be as efficient or more efficient to compete with the likes of Red Bull and maybe even Mercedes going forward, given the development pace of the Mercedes compared to Ferrari. But obviously, only time will tell. And I think it's a good time to just let this be and move on, because I don't think this conversation getting any
yeah.
different uh,
Absolutely.
over the next 8-9 races, right? And I am supposed to go to Kota at towards the end of this year. I think it's the third last race, fourth last race, and I'm like, hopefully the championship is not wrapped up by then,
Yeah,
mathematically,
yeah,
hopefully,
yeah.
but who knows?
Maybe
Who
maybe
knows?
Max will wrap
Uh,
it up at Kota, so you will see all the
yeah,
all the mega
that
celebrations.
is
Yeah,
that is that is that is the most I can wish for at
yeah,
this point. That is like that will be the dream scenario
yeah,
for this season. Um, yeah, and I was thinking, as a Ferrari fan, it will be a great season to go watch an F1 race, and this was the luckiest I could have been regarding it, but clearly clearly not. But anyway, let's talk about the biggest flashpoint of Sunday, and obviously it involves your beloved Fernando Alonso. I mean, Obviously, Lewis Hamilton owned up to his mistake. It was definitely his mistake, pinching Alonso from the outside. But what did you make of the comments that came after that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know, and I don't want to make a big deal out of it, and no one does, right? But clearly, when Fernando said those, like the when he called Lewis an idiot and whatnot, he was in the heat of the moment. He had started great. He was running P2, and when Lewis tried the overtake, right, and he fell back to P4. So obviously, Fernando was frustrated, and because Sergio Perez had a bad start, and we know that Fernando Alonso is one of the greatest starters in Formula One. So he got straight up to P2, right? But I think after the race, when Lewis was asked for his commentary, he accepted it. But then the journalist told Lewis what Alonso had said, and Lewis was not amused by it, right? And clearly, obviously, why would he be? And when Alonso was asked about it after the race and told that Lewis accepted his mistake, yeah, sure, why not? And like that's it, I guess. There was nothing much to add except what Fernando said in the heat of the moment, right? And it has been made much bigger of a scenario than it is. But we clearly know, we all already know that these two have a history, right? So that's about it. That's about it.
Yeah, I think after Fernando's comment about how Lewis only knows how to drive when he starts from pole
Yeah.
position. I think someone posted on Twitter Fernando's all-time career wins number 32. I think.
Yeah, and Lewis has
And,
won more than
Lewis's
40 outside of pole position. Yeah, sure, why not?
pole position. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
both of
sorry.
them had a
But
and I think someone also posted that Lewis has more career wins outside of pole position than even Ayrton Senna. But
yeah,
but
but
each
let's
driver
not,
had a
drag Ayrton
different
Senna into the
yeah
comment.
each driver had a different
But
career.
but I have a question from the comments that Lewis made after he got to know about what Fernando said, and he said, I'm paraphrasing here, right? And he said something on the lines of, our career figures stats go to show who made the better decisions and who had a better career, right? But even so, he said something along the lines of that. But here's my question to you, right? Now, Fernando is still regarded by a lot of people, not just you, as the greatest, one of the greatest of
Yeah.
all time, right? Here's my question: should a driver's choices, regardless of his driving abilities and the way he can perform in a car, should a driver's choices that define his career should also be included when talking about the greatest sports person or drive, which in Formula One's case, the greatest driver of all time? Should that be a metric in that discussion?
Yeah, it's
Because if you look at it, Michael Schumacher has seven championship titles. He won at Benetton and he left Benetton to essentially be with Ferrari and build the team there and won 5 championships with them. And then similarly with Lewis Hamilton, he had a championship with McLaren. There was little reason for him to leave, and everybody thought he was, for the lack of a better word, stupid to do what he did
Yeah.
back then. But it turned out to be the greatest decision in modern Formula One. So should that should a driver's ability to make career choices be a metric in the greatest driver of all time conversation?
see, the only quantifiable thing in that conversation is the the championships and the race wins and the podiums and all those things, right? When you talk about the driving standard, the driving class, it's not quantifiable. It is what the general perception is, sort of.
Yeah, but that is
And
exactly why
yeah,
Fernando is regarded as one of the
Yeah,
best
and
of all time.
I'm coming to your question because the driver moves is one of Alonso's so-called biggest weakness. Like the moves he made throughout his career are regarded as one of his biggest weakness because he always went to the wrong place at the wrong time, and sometimes to the right place at the wrong time even, right? But again, that is sort of subjective because when he went to Ferrari in 2010, it was a good move. He came runner up twice by a handful of points, right? And when he went to McLaren in 2015, it was not considered a good move because Honda were just coming in, and then he has made all those different choices after his first McLaren stint. He went back to Renault and all those things. So it is subjective, but yeah, if you want to count it, like in the general discussions, people are already counting that, and people are already discussing it and taking it against Hamilton
Yeah,
and
they're
taking it.
discussing it in the way of metrics,
Yeah.
right? They're already, like you said, there's other stats that complement what I just said, but it's not explicitly discussed that way.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I don't know.
and and the only reason I feel, that obviously Fernando is a two-time world champion, but the only other reason that he's still regarded as one of the greats is because of his driving style. But that again, for me, it seems like an incomplete equation to a larger conversation, like an incomplete, argument to a larger conversation.
See, when
So what I want to hear is a yes or no answer.
I would say no, because and it's not just about Fernando Alonso or Lewis Hamilton, right? See,
yeah.
when you talk about driver moves and the career decisions they make, when you talk about that, it tends to go in the what if category, right? So had he not made this decision, what could have happened and how many titles he would have won or whatnot. So it's in the hypothetical, like he made that decision and got those results, but had he not made that decision, it's the two-sided coins.
But then I can also make the argument that making a decision requires a certain thought process, right? And you need to know a certain amount of things, and based on your collected data, you'll make a decision, right? You're someone who's going to do his masters in, I believe, business analytics and marketing and whatnot, right? So you understand this. You had a bachelor's in business administration, right? So you understand what I'm talking about, right? So if it's not an informed decision, then you can make these mistakes. Like this, it's the same conversation right now, right? That Fernando Alonso is leaving Alpine for Aston Martin. Yes, he wants to be in F1 long term, and that is the driving factor. But I mean, given Aston Martin and Lawrence Stroll's history in the sport so far, there is little evidence to show that Aston Martin is going to move onwards and upwards in the next 5 to 6 years, right? I mean, they might get to where Alpine is today, but it's unlikely that they'll be where Ferrari, Red Bull, or Mercedes are or were over the last 10-15 years. So again, it's the same question for me, right? But anyway, I was just teasing you.
No, see, it's a very interesting thing that you brought up, right? And it certainly will add to the conversations people are having around this topic. But yeah, let's see.
Right, talking about obviously we've been talking about Sunday, but we talked about a lot of other things also, and talking about other things and drivers making moves and their decisions. There is a new player in town. Well, the player is old, but there is a new agenda in town, and that is apparently, according to Autosport's latest article. We thought silly season could not get any sillier with Oscar Piastri and whatever else McLaren is doing, and Alpine. It seems Alpine is apparently interested in Gasly, and Helmut Marko in return is interested in Colton Herta. What are your thoughts about this? I think I'll say this before you answer, right? I think Colton Herta moving to Red Bull is equivalent to when Red Bull signed Max Verstappen, in my opinion, given the way the two go racing on track. They're different personalities off track, but the way they go racing, at least, or from what I've heard and seen, at least so far, it could be a fiery combination that would boil over if they were to be in the same team.
Yeah, and I think the general consensus from what I saw on Reddit and Twitter, from the few comments I read, is that Helmut Marko wants Colton Herta because Colton Herta reminds him of Max Verstappen, right? And his driving style, exactly as you said, and which may be true, But talking about Pierre Gasly, I think it would be the best place for Pierre Gasly to move out of the Red Bull hold, the Red Bull system. And Alpine is a great team at the moment. Esteban Ocon is a great teammate. They have had their differences in the past, but as a teammate alone, Esteban Ocon is great. And Ocon was asked about it. Like,
I don't know. The empirical evidence show Esteban Ocon is
yeah,
not a
yeah.
great
I was
teammate
I
on
was
track.
going to
Let's just
correct. I
put it
was going
that
to
way.
correct myself because of the Sergio Perez days, right? But
Even now with Fernando Alonso, we saw how hard Ocon defends from
yeah.
Alonso. Um, I think Saudi was probably the best example.
But in the end, there would be a good driver pairing for Alpine in terms of performance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not denying that. Yeah.
So I think it's a win-win for all the parties involved. But I'm still not AlphaTauri and Red Bull would be happy to see Colton Herta come in. But I'm still not sure if Colton Herta coming in to AlphaTauri would be the greatest, would be a good move for his career. Even if he wants to come in Formula One, I think that would not be the right fold for him.
I mean, yeah, he doesn't have the what's it called, the driver points or
Super license.
super license points to straight away jump into that AlphaTauri car next season and all of that. But I mean, they're talking about, but again, who really is gonna give an American driver a chance in F1 from IndyCar? It's either gonna be Zach Brown or maybe this opportunity.
Yeah.
There's probably not gonna be another opportunity unless you are in Formula 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and given Colton Herta's and his family's, his dad's reputation in American motorsport and IndyCar especially, I would imagine that if Colton wanted to go back, that would not be a problem.
Yeah.
Once he came to F1 and if it didn't work
Yeah,
out,
absolutely.
obviously it wouldn't look great, but I don't think it would affect his career in IndyCar just because of the sort of separation there is between the two circuses. If I may say so, because we've seen Marcus Ericsson, Roman Grosjean, who didn't have stellar careers in F1 per se, but went on to have a great time in IndyCar and earn the respect and whatnot there. But it does seem a little far-fetched, for Red Bull and Helmut Marko especially to come and say, we want Colton Herta if McLaren can release him from their TPC contract.
Yeah, does it really? I don't know if McLaren comes into play that much in this whole situation, because it's just a testing program contract, right? So it won't be that big of a deal for McLaren to let him go, and it can and it can easily be broken down.
But it might also force Zach Brown to make a move.
Yeah, that's true.
Because right now Zach Brown is the sole heir to all the talent that there is in the IndyCar field, and this opens up a lot of business decisions that need to be made. That Zach Brown might have been delaying through his TPC program where they were evaluating all these drivers, and if there's another player in the market, then he might have to accelerate these decisions and understand what is the best course of action for McLaren, because I think he said in the past that McLaren want to be America's F1 team or something like that, given the presence that they have here already.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's Colton Herta coming into Formula One would be a great opportunity for a US driver coming in, right? He will attract a lot of sponsors for AlphaTauri, and even for Formula One as a whole. The Formula One entity will earn a lot of sponsors through that, and of course, the two sports are so with Ericsson and Grosjean, these two sports have come closer, but with Colton Herta, they'll come closer still, right? And it would be a great opportunity for a season for him as well to test out Formula One, to see what he can do. And as you said, he can always go back to IndyCar. It won't be a lot of problem because we have seen like not in the recent past, but in the past, drivers like Andretti. Uh,
He's probably the only big example.
big example. But there may have been other drivers who came and went back, right? So
But guess who Colton Herta drives for? I mean, obviously you know,
yeah,
but
Andretti Racing, absolutely.
and Andretti is trying to get into F1 and whatnot, and I wonder how they'll feel about having to let go of Colton Herta. And I mean, it's been a while since we have heard from Christian Horner, I think, about the Andretti entry, but again, questions. Is there a bigger deal there? Because I know Andretti had a bigger deal with Renault with the sports car program if they were coming to F1 and whatnot. So I wonder if that might also change plans for Andretti if they are leasing or loaning their driver, to someone else technically. Uh, I mean, I don't think it's gonna be that big, but speculation is all it is. And this story also is not was not just published by Autosport. This story was also picked up by Racer.com, which is one of the leading magazines here and publishers of motorsport content in America. Marshall Pruitt writes for Racer.com. I think he's the one who covered the story here yesterday. So it is making the rounds very, very aggressively, and I'm sure I think he hosts Marshall Pruitt hosts like a racing family show on Monday nights in America at I think 8 p.m. Eastern. So I'm sure those who will be joining that show tonight uh, will be talking about it. So hopefully I can tune in and maybe get some more insight into what is happening behind the scenes. Maybe he's heard a little bit more, but we'll see what is happening. But let's talk about what happened on on track on Sunday a little bit more. Man, Alex Albon had a great race. That Williams was fast in sector one, and that was just enough to allow Alex Albon to finish in the points once again.
Yeah, there was a meme going around that Williams's lack of downforce is helping them at Spa, and who knows what it will do in Monza. But Alex Albon, he has been the standout performer from the bottom half of the grid this season. I think like everyone knew that he is a good driver, but after the Red Bull fiasco, no one expected him to come back so well, right? But I think he has been incredible in that Williams, and getting into Q3. I think this was his first Q3 appearance, but still qualifying pretty well throughout the season and racing pretty well throughout the season. He is good. He's shown how good he is defensively in this weekend at Spa. He has made a couple of like good overtakes and good fights, but yeah, incredible. And with Alex Albon going to Q3, I think this is the first time in Formula One history that all full-time drivers have made it to Q3. Like since this
Oh, in this season, in this
no,
season.
not this season. Since this qualifying format has been in play, because
Oh, okay.
yeah, there was some stat that before Alex Albon made it to Q3 in Spa, the highest like Stoffel Vandoorne and Sergei Sirotkin were P11 and P12 at their that was their highest qualifying position in 2017
Okay, I
or
get it.
18,
Yeah.
something like that.
So this is the first season with this qualifying format where all full-time
Have made it
drivers
to
have
Q3.
qualified in the
Yeah,
top 10.
at least once. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That's an interesting stat. Did not see that anywhere on social media yesterday.
Yeah, well,
So,
it was day
thank you.
before yesterday, but I saw it on Twitter, on Reddit. Sorry, on Reddit. So yeah, in
Yeah,
the
see,
comments,
I'm not
in
really
the
on
comments,
Reddit.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm not really on Reddit. But yeah, besides Alex Albon, I mean, Esteban Ocon had double overtakes in the race, and it was just beautiful to see. Sebastian Vettel had a fabulous race, in my opinion. And Alonso, even after having some damage, he drove beautifully and finished in the points. So double points for Alpine. but McLaren seemed to be nowhere, which was a little bit surprising given they had a yes, not a crash last year, but they seem to have the pace, and it's just the Formula 1.5 is definitely shaking up every
Yeah.
race, and it's quite enjoyable to see that. And even though there was no battles in the front of the grid yesterday, uh, the overall race lower down the grid it was quite I wouldn't say thrilling, but it was quite enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. It was somewhat like the races of 2017, 18, something like that, when Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas are running up front, but the midfield is still tight. The midfield is still fighting, and those times there were the DRS trains and less overtaking. But now with these cars, the overtaking and the fighting has improved, so that's always good. But talking about McLaren, I mean, Norris started from the back, so but he couldn't find any pace. He never really was running well of what or whatever. But Daniel Ricciardo, man, once again, he qualified P11 or P12, P11, yeah. But due to grid penalties, he started P7 or P6, something like that. He started well, but
Yeah, yeah.
no pace. Like the it seems that every race the decision will get justified more and more.
There's no doubt about that. He hasn't been able to turn it around in a year and a
Yeah.
half, and the only outstanding performance was really Monza last year. I'm sure there were a couple other performances where he finished uh, in front of Norris, well in front of Norris, but there isn't a lot we can write home about for Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren. And Cyril, everybody posts that
Yeah.
little clip from Cyril that says that Daniel will. He has complete confidence that Daniel will
Regret,
regret his decision, but yeah, it does seem that Daniel does want to race in F1. But the question is that he can't move up. The only place he can move is further down the grid.
Yeah.
So where does Daniel slot in everything that is going on right now? Because even Mick Schumacher's seat is apparently not confirmed at Haas, and there has been a lot of rumors about it. I know we haven't addressed it here, but there have been a lot of rumors about Mick Schumacher at not being at Haas next year.
Yeah, it's interesting because see, I think the best opportunity for Daniel Ricciardo would be clearly Alpine, right? The best opportunity for any driver who doesn't have a seat next year would be Alpine, but even Oscar Piastri for that matter. but uh,
Yeah.
but Daniel can go to Alpine, but Alpine would, I think, want someone who has been performing for the last 2 seasons, like Gasly. I'm just assuming that Alpine may prefer Gasly over Ricardo if they can get him. But the Haas seat and the potential Williams seat, it's all a very interesting game, really. I don't know what.
I mean, because at this point, I would think Alpine. I mean, yes, they had Fernando Alonso, and there will be a school of thought that says, oh, you need an experienced driver in that second seat because that is what you had before. But I mean, if they're really developing the team for the long term, they would want a young driver
Yeah.
in that second seat also alongside Esteban Ocon. So Daniel Ricciardo doesn't really fit that particular fold. And then going any further down the grid isn't really conducive, I guess, to his, and I mean, not to his career, but like just having that
No, I mean,
fun in F1, because that is basically why Seb is
Yeah.
retiring, because he's unable to fight at the front of the grid
Exactly.
anymore, and he's like, hey, this is I want to be in F1, but it's not worth it to me anymore. What I would like to see is Daniel obviously come to the US, but instead of going to IndyCar, go to NASCAR.
yeah.
I think that is something that he would enjoy.
Yeah, I think Daniel would. I mean, he says he won't do any of that, and I think he has said absolute no to oval racing. He might be open to the IndyCar road and street tracks, but he has said no to anything apart from Formula One, which for me is strange because a driver like Daniel Ricciardo can have a great second career in any of IndyCar or WEC for that matter, right? But I think he won't go to Haas. I think he won't go to Williams because he doesn't want to drive that far behind. I think if he doesn't get the Alpine seat, he'll sit out next year, see what happens, and maybe hope for another seat in 2024. But we know when you are at that age, when you are at that point in your career, and you step back, there's rarely a chance that you will come back in. So
And the only person who seems to have successfully come back is the two-time world champion.
yeah,
And however good Daniel is, he does not have that credential at all. Especially over the last 2 years, it's only gone downhill from where he was.
yeah,
But I mean, even down the grid, Williams has a couple juniors in line to take that seat next to Albon. Albon seems to be, becoming. I mean, he's obviously the lead driver now, but in a couple of years' time, he will be in a position where uh, Williams probably won't feel the need to have not have a paid driver, but also not have another veteran of the sport in the second seat. They can put a young driver in and be confident about that. Similarly with Sauber now, obviously the Alfa Romeo deal will come to an end. I think
after
at the end of
23, yeah,
2023, whatever. So and it seems like they'll have a tie-up with Audi. So who knows how that will influence the driver decisions going forward. And we also have Theo Pocher, who's in the wings waiting for an F1 seat. He's done pretty well, to be in F1, it seems, over the last 3-4 years. And there will be little reason other than, Guan Yu Zhou's performance to not have Theo Pocher also placed somewhere in F1. So even that is something to think about. But clearly there's a lot of young talent just waiting on the flanks, to just sign for the seat.
yeah. The thing is that the young talent waiting in Formula 2, no one is like an Oscar Piastri or Charles Leclerc or Max Verstappen or George Russell for that matter, right? Every single driver right now in Formula 2 will get a chance if there is a seat. It's not like they will get a seat and someone in Formula 1 will have to suffer like it was in the case of all these drivers I mentioned before. So that could make it interesting, and that could give someone like Daniel another chance, right? But yeah, I think it's Alpine or nothing. From my perspective, it's Alpine or nothing for Daniel Ricciardo, and we have seen. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it anymore because it sort of makes everyone sad, right? But yeah,
Yeah. But I also Oscar Piastri's the verdict on Oscar Piastri's contract negotiations and everything that is going on will be out today, tomorrow, hopefully sometime this week at the latest. So keep an eye out for that. And that's all from my side. Is there anything else, Vedant, that you want to talk about that we haven't touched on today?
well, no, I think we have covered pretty much everything. We have covered more than just the Spa weekend, right? And yeah, it was a great conversation. It opened up a lot of new topics, certainly. And yeah, let's see what Zandvoort has in store for us.
Well, I will not be home, so I will not be watching the race. There is there is nothing, hopefully, that I'll miss
Yeah.
out on. Especially not a Ferrari win, so I think it's gonna be okay.
Yeah. Well, let's see.
Well, thank you, Vedant, for joining me once again. As always, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and we'll catch you on the next one. Don't forget, the IndyCar season wraps up over the next 2 weekends, and there's only 3 points separating the top two. Stay tuned.